Hello and welcome to the 20th in my series of presentations on the conflict between science and creationism. Today I'm going to be talking about the subject of health, investigating some of the wackier health-related claims that young Earth creationists make in their all-out assault on modern science. In particular, in this presentation I'll be looking at a number of claims made in the presentations of the infamous young Earth creationist Kent Hovind. This means that I won't be covering the whole topic, and I won't even be covering it in any sensible order. I'll just cover the topics that Hovind himself mentions. Hovind moves into full-blown conspiracy theory territory with this section. I've cut out several of the topics that are strictly irrelevant to the creationism evolution debate, including 1. Immunisation. If you still think that immunisation causes autism, then frankly you're a moron. 2. Big pharmaceutical companies are evil. Well, they want to make money, but if your claim is that they try to keep people ill, then you're also a moron. Think about the competition analysis of that scenario for a second, and I'm sure you'll convince yourself that it can't possibly be true. 3. Abortion. Hovind talks about how abortion is evil in his opinion. Your own measure of what is morally right or wrong is a personal choice, of course. This topic is irrelevant to the rest of the debate, however. 4. Chemtrails. This one is so absurd that it goes way beyond moron territory and into full-blown delusion. Look it up if you want a good laugh. So, with those exceptions, let's just get started. Can we live forever purely by eating a balanced diet? There's a good deal of evidence that human beings are supposed to survive into their 40s, perhaps 50s at the most, but no longer. That seems to have been a fairly old age for most of human history. The reason why people grow old and die is surprisingly not tremendously well known. What is well known is that the length of the telomeres, that is the bits at the end of your chromosomes in your DNA, gets steadily shorter during your lifetime. When they get too short, then normal DNA replication can't proceed. The replication process requires that the end of the chromosomes is snipped off each time a replication event happens. Once the telomere is exhausted, then genetic replication starts failing. Now, of course, there is way more to aging than this, but it's certainly a very important underlying step. So no matter how healthily you eat, you're not going to live to 1,000. Not to mention the obvious fact that there are plenty of people on Earth who live extremely healthy lives with plenty of fruit and vegetables and without the processed sugars and fats, smoking and alcohol that plague our modern civilization. But we don't see people exceeding the average human lifetime with any regularity. In fact, the largest contributor to how long people live still seems to be just genetics. You'll be able to see much more on this topic in the upcoming presentation on the subject of longevity. So let's move on. Are there any foods available out there that are so healthy that they have a drastic impact on serious diseases like cancer? I know that the companies pushing all natural herbal remedies and so-called superfoods and such like would like you to believe that, but there simply isn't much evidence in their favour. If there were, then the big pharmaceutical companies that Hovind also despises would have researched them, would be selling them and would be making hundreds of billions of dollars from them already. It's that simple. The claims of a few people to have found vegetable or fruit supplements that vastly improve any medical condition should be treated with extreme scepticism, until they're able to show properly controlled experimental data that backs up this claim, of course. If they haven't done just that, then you have to ask why. The answer is usually because the so-called miracle cure doesn't work. Very rarely is the situation any more complicated than this. Pharmaceutical companies spend billions of dollars travelling the world and investigating the medicinal properties of all manner of naturally occurring compounds. They aren't going to miss anything obvious, especially if it's advertised in your local glossy magazine. Eating plenty of fruit and vegetables is certainly a good thing, but don't think that certain fruits or vegetables will have miraculous health-giving properties. Again, Hovind is just replicating well-known and fully debunked myths here. Hovind goes well into conspiracy theory territory again by claiming that not only does science not have a positive effect on public health, but that it actually causes disease. What can be said about that? Well, it's fair to say that people today are generally much more at risk of a few diseases such as obesity and those other conditions that come with it such as diabetes, as well as health risks caused by technology such as vehicle fumes and factory pollution. But I don't see Hovind attacking those particular causes. No, his claim is very clear. He claims that disease itself is caused by the advance of science, not, as the figures say, cured by science. This is a very simple one to disprove. Let's just look at a graph of average lifespan over time. Here's one for the United States for the 20th century, courtesy of figures published by the National Centre of Health Statistics. See how the graph slopes upwards as we become increasingly scientifically advanced and as medical science emerges from the ignorance of the Middle Ages and we start to develop better and better scientific technologies. Science has cured so many diseases that killed hundreds of millions of people. The fact is that we now live on average more than twice as long as we did in the Middle Ages. Infant mortality in the United States has been reduced by a factor of 4 in the last 50 years alone, and all of this is thanks to medical science. The fact that Hovind makes this argument is deeply worrying, as it proves that he is either extraordinarily ignorant or deliberately trying to create conspiracy theories against science to back up his case. Well, that's all for now. As ever, there's loads more information on my website at frame.net, where you can also find a transcript of this talk and all the following ones and all the previous ones. And you can keep up to date with my blog as well as learning about some of my other work. See you next time when I'll be talking about the myth of the global flood, covering some of the specific questions that I haven't yet addressed in other presentations. Thanks for listening.